Hey everybody, welcome to Satsang on this beautiful, cool, very cool here in Seattle anyway, Sunday afternoon, early afternoon for me and for people joining us around the world. And I'm just checking my thing here to make sure that I'm showing up, and I am. So as people are beginning to join, I want to, as always, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking this chunk of time out of your day, out of your Sunday, to do some deep inner exploration. Now, there may be some noise around me. There's actually some construction going on around me that is out of my control. I don't know if you can hear that banging. But there's nothing I can do about it, so we're just going to press on as we always do, and just kind of take it in as the normal background sound, the soundtrack to our lives, which is not always perfectly still. So again, thank you all for being here. I'm just kind of dancing a little bit as people begin to join. We're very early into it. I think I started a few seconds early. Again, satsang is an opportunity to explore the nature of our existence, the nature of our being, to ask questions that we normally don't ask during our normal weeks, our normal time that we spend doing out in the world, to take the time to explore the true meaning of your existence, the true meaning of reality. Whoops. Of reality is I mean, it's not something you're going to hear very often. I mean, you go to a job interview or or something, and they want to know what school you went to and your experience and your salary requirements. They never stop and say, yeah, but I see all your education, but who are you? Who are you really? Nobody asks that. It doesn't have anything to do with the normal functioning of our culture and our economics and our political systems and just the way we do everything. The deep question as to who are you isn't relevant, which is why for many people spiritual inquiry has become kind of either a luxury, or it's the kind of thing you do when you have time, or it's been watered down to be a practice for stress relief or something like that. When it's absolutely nothing of the kind. It's the most important question you can possibly ask. I mean, let's think about it. The sense of identity, the sense of the self-image that you hold, determines absolutely everything else in your life. Who you are, that is, who you believe yourself to be, is influencing every decision you make, every experience you have, everything you see. The tiniest thing that goes on is being interpreted through that lens. Now, identity is not a bad thing, right? It's very, very useful. Without a sense of identity, a sense of, well, this is what I am and this is what I'm not. I mean, imagine walking into a shoe store and having to pick from 1,000 pairs of shoes or 200 pairs of shoes. How many pairs of shoes they have in these stores? When you walk in to a place like that to get a new article of clothing or something, you don't have to look at everything, right? There's a whole bunch of just, no, that's not me, that's not me, that's not me, that's not me. That's what we'd say. No, I don't wear that. That's not the kind of thing that I wear. And so your choices get narrowed down to here. If you're a guy, you might try on 2 pairs of shoes, right? If you're a woman, maybe 12, but not 1,000, right? And so that sense of identity is useful. It's a shorthand for kind of having to limit the experiences that we have. Otherwise, we would be completely and totally overwhelmed. But when we believe that that is actually our permanent, real character, our real identity, the truth of our being, well, now we're stuck there. Now we don't recognize that it's just an arbitrary thing that got created before you had any idea of choice or what you could or you were not involved in the process of the sense of identity getting created. And this deep inquiry as to who are you really is the antidote for that. It is to actually consciously begin to see through our identities that are always a limitation to the you, the reality of you that was there before conditioning even took place, before a sense of identity got created. Now, I called this particular satsang, Stillness Is Bliss. And I wanted to just mention, and by the way, if I want to, please type into the chat here who you are, where you're from, and even if you've come with a question already, by all means you can put it in there. Also, if you are so inclined, please like this and share it so we can bring more people in. I know that more people will be joining. We usually get quite a few. So, and I do have some. We got Emiliano from Sweden. We've got Daryl from Washington, D.C. Johanna from Mexico. We've got Mix from the UK. We've got Barbara from Sweden. Thanks to your summertime. Oh yeah. I'll bet you that's why there's not as many people right here now. I should have put in the email that we went on daylight savings time. I'll bet an hour from now there's going to be a lot of people joining. That's why the number's unusually low. People forget. I know, I do. It's really difficult. It's really, really difficult. I have people from all over the world, as we know. So let's see. Chris says, "Hello, GP. Can you describe the 3 stages?" Okay, I'll get to the questions in a second. Wonderful. Mitch from Sydney. Hello, Mitch. Love Sydney. It was one of my favorite cities when I visited it. It was really, really amazing. So the purpose of spiritual inquiry is to know who you are. When you know who you are, everything is clear. Everything is easy. All your actions are natural. All your desires are trustworthy. All of your decisions are trustworthy. You are trustworthy. It takes a lot of effort to be who you're not. It takes 0 effort to be what you are, right? It doesn't take any effort for a dog to bark, because it's what they do. It doesn't take any effort for us to blink, because it's just the natural flow of life. When you are consciously aware of who you really are, life becomes easy. If your life is hard, it's not because of the circumstances you're in. It's because you are acting out a version of yourself that's not you, which means this question of who am I, which I started this whole thing with, is not a luxury. It is determining every single event in your life. Now, the pursuit of the true understanding of your nature. Many people have some very significant spiritual experiences. Sometimes feel an enormous bliss, an enormous release. When you realize oneness or some breakthrough takes place, there's this enormous sense of bliss, of excitement, of happiness, right? An emotional happiness that comes over us. And what happens then is we usually start pursuing that. We want to hold on to more of that. We start pursuing the bliss. Well, the bliss is momentary. I can vouch for that because I've done plenty of that in my lifetime, and I can vouch for the fact that it's momentary. nobody can stay in that heightened state of bliss that much. So when they're talking about the bliss of self-awareness, they're not talking about an emotional high. They're talking about stillness. Ananda, which is the word they use for it in Sanskrit, means bliss, but they are referring to peace. Just literally contentment. The sense that, you know what, everything is okay just the way it is. That's the true thing we're truly after. And if you're not feeling that, then the problem isn't circumstantial. The problem isn't you got to fix yourself. The problem isn't there's something wrong or out of whack. It's not another layer of childhood trauma. It is a misunderstanding of who you actually are. That's it. Which simplifies this whole problem, right? We don't have layers and layers and layers of stuff to get through. Not really. We only have to get right to the root of the tree. And the root of the tree is, who do you think you are? And the process by which we examine that is actually quite simple. You've heard me say it a bunch of times before, but I'd really like you to take it into your heart. My favorite quote from St. Francis of Assisi: what you are looking for is where you are looking from. That's it. That's the entirety of the deepest non-dual spiritual inquiry you can do. To let your attention begin to migrate away from what you are seeing, away from the external experiences, and turn inward, and as you're moving inward, you're going past just the realm of sensation, past the realm of just emotion, and past the realm of thought. All of which can get us very, very absorbed, especially when we're pursuing the bliss. What we're pursuing oftentimes is feeling good, which is an emotional state, which is great, right? I mean, I'm all for feeling good, and I'm all for stuff that makes us feel good, but it's not the answer to the question, right? The answer to the question comes when we move past that. Our vision turns around, and attention goes away from physical items, from the external world and all of the engagement with it and all of the patterns and all of the stuff that we have to deal with. We have to deal with too. I mean, it's not, right? It's not, we're not trying to become irresponsible. And as we're moving inward, right, we first start, and oftentimes, when I start a meditation, I'll bring attention first to the body. Right? And then the body, and that brings the attention, you're closing your eyes, you bring your attention away from what is external, and the first place we end up is inside the body. And so our attention now becomes the sensations that we're feeling within our body. And then I'll ask you to move in a little deeper in the emotions, and then also notice the thoughts. So that's really kind of the internal world, right? And of course, there's a beautiful continuum between the internal world and the external world. I mean, that's what the law of attraction is about, right? This harmonization between the inner and the outer. But that's not where it ends. For true, deep spiritual inquiry, you have to go one step further, and it is just one step. And that is to notice what it is that is aware of sensation, feeling, and thought. Because all of those, sensation, feeling, and thought, come and go. Thoughts are the most flighting. They're just gone in an instant. Feelings last a little bit longer. Sensations, can last a little bit longer. But everything comes and goes, right? Something is monitoring the coming and the going, which, at least relative to what we know now, is not coming and going. Is that not you? Are you not the one that's aware of sensations, thoughts, and emotions? The entirety of experience, all levels of vibration, if you want to put it that way. Are you not that one? So that's it. That's all there is to it, to come to this place where, okay, well, I am that which is aware of all of these things. Now, that's a textbook definition for consciousness, right? I point out, the microphone that's picking up my voice is not conscious of my voice. It's not hearing me, right? The whole mechanism of the internet, even the structure of your eardrum isn't hearing me. Something is hearing me, and that's what I call consciousness. Whatever it is that's hearing my voice right now. Now, what I just want you to do in this very simple way of approaching the question of who am I really is to just be with that. Just be with the fact that whatever that is fully aware, that is aware of everything else, and that while everything else is changing, this is not changing, whatever that is what I am. And now this is important. This is a very important thing, because the moment you start doing that, you might say, well, that's who am I? Your mind will start giving you all sorts of answers. If you ask others, they're probably going to give you all sorts of answers. The only time you're going to find somebody who's not going to give you an answer, but instead point you to this place and hold you there so you get your own answer, is when you're in satsang, whether it be me or somebody else. It's the only place it's going to happen. Because we don't know what that is. And any thought about it is going to be yet another idea. It's going to be another concept. It's going to be another sense of identity. So the answer has to come directly from that place, the place from which you are looking, that which is seeing, which is you. If you just hold to that with the question, well, okay, who am I then? Who is me? Who is this me that is aware of everything else, aware of all changing, but itself is not changing? Now, all you can do is sit there and marinate. There's nothing you can do. There's no mental gymnastics you can go through. It is simply constantly reminding yourself, right, because you will find yourself identifying. You will find yourself, your attention going towards the external environment. You will find your attention wandering, and suddenly you'll be re-identified. You'll be thinking of yourself as a person, and your gender and race and beliefs and all of that sort of thing. Every time you do that, you go, oh, right. But every idea I have of myself, every feeling I have about myself, every image I have of myself is in fact being perceived by me. So they can't be me. So what am I then? What is this? What am I really? And that's the only practice I have for you. It really is the heart of everything I teach. Now, inner reconciliation and the like is a process by which I prepare the nervous system for this. That's all. That's all it is. It's also very therapeutic. It really relieves childhood trauma. It brings the entire focus of your attention into real clarity, because you can see that conditioning is conditioning and not you. You can understand that voice in your head is not your voice. Any sound you hear in your head is being perceived by you, isn't it? It's being perceived. So that means that any thought you have about yourself isn't you. It's just an idea. It's just a thought passing by. So anyway, I'm going to go back to the cue here. I have to put on my glasses here for a second. They got a little bit bent. I think I sat on them. Let's see. Who else we got? Chris says, hello, GP. Can you describe the 3 stages, thought, mind, and consciousness, and explain what each one does and how it works in order? Thanks a lot. Chris from London. Okay. Thought, mind, and consciousness. Thought, you could think of thought as kind of the basic, it's kind of like an element, like a molecule, right? And molecules make up cells, and cells make up larger and larger things. But everything comes down to simply a momentary thought coming and going. Mind is not a thing, right? There really is no such thing as mind. Mind is a word we use, and by the way, if you hear any of the banging, as I mentioned at the beginning, and some of you weren't here, there's a lot of construction going on me around my studio, and I had to decide whether I was going to try to go outside and do this, but it's like really cold out. Find somewhere else, and I'm just going to have to do it here. So if you hear some banging, I'm sorry. Nothing I can do about it. So anyway, mind is is itself another thought. It's a thought that is abstracted, right? The way our cognitive ability works is that, thoughts form patterns, and when a thought forms a pattern, it gets kind of complex, and so we invent another thought to refer to this complex set of functions that are happening, which is thought processing. Like the word body, right? I say body, everybody knows what we're talking about. Well, the body's 50 to 100 trillion cells. Each one of those cells a living being, this whole thing working together to make the appearance of this unified whole. So the word body is an abstraction. Now it's useful, especially if we're having a conversation like this, because I can say body, everybody knows what I'm talking about. I'm talking about body in general, not a particular body, right? But just body in general. And notice how we can do that. I could say the word dog and you know what I'm talking about. Or I could say, a dog or a Labrador, right? And you know what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about something specific. So this capacity we have for abstracting and generalizing, what happens when we do that is that every time you make an abstraction, right, you get enough of these abstractions together and you have to abstract it again. You have another name for that, right? So we would have like the Earth, let's say the Earth. Then we have the solar system, right? And then we have the galaxy, right? And all of those are abstractions on top. And so we can create stories about the galaxy. Well, the galaxy is nothing but a collection of stars, right? Right? The galaxy doesn't exist independently of the stars. It's an abstraction of the way the stars happen to organize. The word mind is nothing but an abstraction that sums up the sum total of thought and all of its patterns. So when I say to you, that's just the mind speaking to you, that really is animating something that isn't animating. It simply means the mind is simply a pattern of thoughts. What you would call your mind is the particular pattern of thoughts that you have identified with. And the word ego is simply a subset of that. All the thoughts that refer to me, you can call the ego. And the ego too does not exist. It is not a thing, right? There's not an ego that is doing stuff. There's not a mind that's creating thoughts any more than there's a galaxy that created stars, right? It's simply a word to do a shortcut for communication purposes of something that is much more complex. And so it becomes an abstraction. But you can see we can create abstraction upon abstraction upon abstraction and abstraction. And the more abstractions we create, the further we get from the ultimate reality. So okay, and then the last one is consciousness. Well, the way I use the word consciousness is almost synonymous with what people would say the absolute, and there are some variations on it, right? In some some of the teachings of the Buddha before, which he completely eradicates in the Heart Sutra, but it's useful, is that he would refer to an I consciousness, right? Your eye knows nothing of the world of sound or taste or touch or smell. All it knows is form, the shades of light, right? And so you could say that is a consciousness of light. There's a whole process involved there. When I use the word consciousness, I am very simply referring to that which is hearing my words right now. That which is seeing your thoughts, that which is feeling the feelings, that which is aware of the sensations and everything about it, that which is aware of mind, aware of abstractions, aware of all of this sort of stuff, that to me is consciousness, which is synonymous with you, is synonymous with the true I. So that's how I make the distinction. Thought is just kind of the building block. It's like a star, right? And of course the star is made up of smaller particles. That's an abstraction. Right? And the smaller particles are made up of smaller. A molecule is an abstraction of an atom, actually. You can see it like that. So the thoughts coming together, forming a pattern, right? And that pattern doesn't exist separate from the thoughts, right? Right? That becomes the mind. Simple as that. A word to describe a complex pattern of thoughts. Right? And consciousness is simply that which is aware of all of it. That's all there is to it. So does that answer it for you, Chris? It's a great question. Mitch says, Sydney, Australia. Hi from Sydney, Australia. Oh, that's right. I think I mentioned that one. Mike, GP. I should get over here and make sure I stay close to the mic. I just wanted to share a recent and powerful realization. We will flourish best in life by meeting everything with complete and deep acceptance. There is nothing our loving stillness can't hold. Thank you, Mike. I think you should put that on a picture and put it up as a meme. It's brilliant. It's beautiful. Flourish best in life by meeting everything with complete and deep acceptance. There is nothing our loving stillness can't hold. And that is an absolute truth. That is an absolute... Our stillness, which is our consciousness. Your consciousness is totally still. That which is aware of thought does not come and go with the thought, is not disturbed by thought, it is not modulated or messed up by thought. It's like writing your name on water. It just goes right through. And so that your nature is stillness. When you realize that all the action, all the activity, all of the stuff that isn't still, the constant flow, is happening on the other side of the lens, and you're sitting on this side of the lens just watching it, you recognize that you are completely unaffected by whatever happens. Good, bad, or indifferent. In fact, good, bad, and indifferent are just other names given to different things, right? I mean, there's no absolute definition of good. To the environmentalist, an old-growth forest is a thing of enormous value that needs to be protected at all cost. Right? To somebody who has a couple of those trees, to somebody who's got that in their backyard, it might just be the place, a nice thing to look out my window. For children, it might be a wonderful place to play. For the squirrels, it's home. For the real estate developer, it's a pain in the ass. I've got to clear all this away to make way for a golf course or something. Now notice, everybody's looking at exactly the same thing. But for one, it's this beautiful thing that needs protected. The other, it's this pestilence that has to be gotten rid of. All of the way we see it. Now, you may have your preference. I know I certainly do. I go with the environmentalist over the real estate developer. But I have to recognize, if I'm going to be wise in protecting things, that nobody's perspective is correct. Right? You can expand and say, well, which one's, which path is going to take you to the best place? But all of that is subjective. So everything you are perceiving, including your interpretation of it, the value you put on it, is all happening on the other side of the lens. And is being perceived at a place that has no preference, it has no dependencies, it is 100% still, and everything is welcome there. And you can tell that everything is welcome there because the only way there could be a reaction or an interpretation or a thought about something is that the thing already got in. Say, God, I don't really like that, and push it away. But it's already in, right? Your pure acceptance and awareness has already let that in. It's already there. It's already been allowed. So consciousness, in its essence, is allowing of everything. Right? If it wasn't, you'd never see it in the first place. But it gets in, and we say, "Oh, I don't like that." Right? But that's just a response, a conditioned response, maybe a wise response, maybe not. But it means that it's already been received. It's kind of like, the eye does not filter out anything that it sees. If the light strikes it, it gets in. It's later up the chain with, I don't like that. We wince, we move away from it, we push away. The eye itself doesn't do that. And that's a very good metaphor for the nature of your consciousness. It does not have an argument with anything. Right? This isn't to say we need to be, it's okay. Conventionally, in the everyday, in dealing with each other, we do have to decide what is going to work for us and what isn't. But we also have to realize that that's going to fluctuate culturally. And oftentimes we think something is good for us, and later on we find it isn't. And then people have a vested interest. And, that's what conflict is about. I don't want to get into all of that. I'm hoping that I am adding a little bit of light to what Mike just said. And I'll say it again because it's beautiful. We will flourish best in life by meeting everything, and he makes everything in all caps, with complete and deep acceptance. There is nothing our loving stillness can't hold. That is absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Mike. Leanne, hello, Leanne. So good to see you. Hi from Mooloolaba, Australia. Remington, hi, GP. No questions today. Just going with life. That's my man. Daryl Sanders says, Mooloolaba. Wow, I agree. Remington, good. Stay in that space. Just going with life as it naturally and beautifully unfolds. Try not to control anything. That's bliss for me. That's from Zara. That is bliss, right? Bliss is not an emotional high. It is deep contentment. It's everything's all right, just as it is. And that's important to note, because we tend to we tend to get very attached to peak experiences. We want more of that. I mean, that's where addictions come from, right? We want more of that. The essence of human suffering is conflict, inner conflict, and the inner conflict is with what's actually here. We have a conflict with what is here in this moment. We have a conflict with our thoughts about ourselves. We have all sorts of inner conflicts, but at the essence of those inner conflicts is a disagreement with what is, which leads to the two aspects of that are attachment and aversion, or a grasping, trying to hold on to something, or trying to acquire something, or resistance, trying to keep something away or to get rid of something that you have. And oftentimes something you're attached to, you get it, and you're selling it on eBay the next day. So, I mean, that's our conflict with what is. If the conflict goes away, the attachment and the aversion go away, there you are simply completely in contentment. Now, that doesn't mean everything is always going to be perfect for you, right? It will feel that way because you have no argument with anything. And it doesn't mean you become a milquetoast, you're completely passive. What it means, though, is that your response to a moment is not a conditioned pattern. It's not coming from an attachment or an aversion. It's coming from wisdom. When conflict is gone, wisdom is present. You are responding as you really are. You're responding from the place of pure conscious awareness. You're not responding as that identity I was talking about earlier. You are not responding from the position of who you are not. The response is coming from who you actually are, and it's always wise, it's always measured, its timing is impeccable, it is patient, it is loving, it is never upset, and every feeling it has, and I say it's never upset, not because things are always the way you want it to be, but because that just moves through you very quickly, right? Sages get angry, but it's there for a second and gone. Nothing is held on to. They can be very harsh, right? But it's not without love, and it's never held on to. So every feeling, every experience of being alive and being human can move through the system with equanimity. I love that word, equanimity, which means that you are completely content no matter what happens. That's the true inner bliss. That's the true inner equanimity that is the ultimate attainment, for a lack of a better word, of the spiritual journey. And it isn't an attainment. I have to say attainment. It appears to be an attainment because it's the other side of conditioning and false sense of identity and all that. But what it really is your true nature revealed, your true nature discovered, your true nature known and felt. That's why they call it self-realization. you realize your true nature. And so your consciousness, your conscious existence in the world is now being informed by your true nature. You don't have a false identity anymore. Your identity is your true nature. But there's still enough of an identity there, a sense of, being this or that you can go into the ice cream store and not freak out because you can't pick amongst 35 flavors. You know what you like and you know what you don't. But they no longer have the kind of power, right? If you can't get your flavor, you take something else. And if you don't have anything at all. So everything becomes very fluid, very gentle, very harmonious. So if you're enjoying this, please like it and share it. It helps bring more people in. And it's only been like 35 minutes, so I'm expecting, because of the time change, I guess I should have sent something out telling everyone that the time change here in the United States, because I know Europe, I think it's another month before Europe goes on daylight savings time. And in Australia, I don't know when, it's the other hemisphere, you're in daylight savings time, and I don't know when you go back to regular time. So, anyway, I can't keep track of all this. Liz Love says, hi GP. Hello Liz. Chris Skills says, are there many different characters that live inside us? It feels like there is. When desires and situations come up, I question myself, who was that after the situation happens? Feels like we are a collection of loose spirits and we are not the master of our own ship. That, Chris, is a huge question, and I've dedicated 2 of the 3 levels of inner reconciliation to that very question. I've taught classes on the chakras and the like, because the ego, the true you is not splintered. There's not many there, right? And that's easy to verify. As you follow the exercise I did at the beginning of this, and if you're joining us later, I took an exercise of where you need to look to find out who you really are. If you do that, and you are there, you'll notice that there's nobody else there. That is absolutely changeless, consistent. It's never different, and it from that point is never in conflict. The conflicts are always on the other side of the lens. It's always something that's being viewed. People think that, we have the ego is this single thing, but it's not. We have all sorts of different ideas about ourselves. And sometimes one is dominant, sometimes another is dominant. It's easy to test that. If you just think about any decision you've made in your life that had any kind of importance about it, and you didn't know what to do, you'll be quite aware that there's 2 of you in there. You are at least of 2 minds, at least, right? And essentially, there's always a conflict between safety and freedom. You'll find that the energy of safety is always wanting to stay where you are. Now, I don't want anything to change. We're safe. Why should we change? I don't care if it's better. I don't know if it's going to be safer. And then on the other side, we have this deep desire to grow and evolve, right, and improve and all of that. And there's this reaching for freedom, right? Reaching for freedom, of course, means I want things to change. I want things to be different, right? So on one side, we're reaching for freedom that wants this other, magnificent vision of what's possible. And then over here, we've got no way, right? Boom, they're like this. And this is inherent, right? You're not a human being if this isn't happening. Right? If this isn't happening, you're a dog or something, because dogs don't reach for freedom. Dogs are quite content. However they get conditioned, no problem. The self-aware consciousness is unique to human beings as far as we can tell. There's some of it in dolphins and whales, like some in elephants too. But it seems like the only critter that can actually ponder itself is the human being. This is the most significant gift: self-awareness, consciousness of our own, of our own being. So remember that you are aware of these, as you said, you are aware of these a collection of loose spirits. Right? The problem is that now all of those collection of spirits, whether there be 2 or 10. and in the chakra system, the way I teach it, there are 7, are different energies within the system that have different ambitions, different desires, different concerns, different mandates, different necessities. And they're all there, constantly interacting. When our sense of identity forms, we tend to favor certain of it. We take a position. Now remember, consciousness that you are doesn't have a position. They're all just there. Right? But that doesn't mean, it's like, think of the human psyche like a boardroom of a corporation, right? Or a committee meeting, even at a church or a nonprofit. There's going to be differing opinions about what should happen and what should be done, and each one has its own emphasis. In a corporation, the head of marketing, thinks we should be creating a new image. The head of customer service thinks, why should we create it? We can't handle the business we have. We need more money for this. The finance guy says we don't have money for anything, right? Everybody represents a particular point of view. It's a good image for what's happening inside of you. The true CEO, the one who's really the leader, has to find the way for all of these to be reconciled so that the entire ship can head towards a vision. And so when you come back to that place of pure consciousness and aware of it, the more you do it, you start letting go of the position you're taking. You stop taking sides. When you take a side, this becomes good, this becomes bad, and that's where the conflict takes place. If I'm reaching for freedom, and I'm feeling this pull that wants to keep me in the same place, I'm going to say that this is bad. I got to get rid of these negative emotions. They're not negative. There's nothing wrong with them at all. You absolutely need them. But because you've taken a strong position here, this now becomes an enemy. Now, if you step out of that position, and that's why I call it inner reconciliation, you step into this place that I call the light at the center, or the true heart, or the peacemaker, where you simply recognize both of them are valid, both of them are necessary, and now you begin to let them work this way. So it doesn't become, I'm taking a position, this goes away. If I hold this position long enough, I visualize the thing I want, then all these voices are going to get silenced. Instead, it's like, oh, okay. I want this to happen. I want it to happen safely. I need all of those. And you sit back in this other position. And instead of this and this taking place, this begins to take place. The real nature of life is a flow. It's not a position. It's not a fixed thing. It's always a flow. And every circumstance is going to require a different amount of the different things. Some require an enormous amount of vision. Others require an enormous amount of no vision, just straight ahead doing the work. Right? Sometimes freedom is, you can have total freedom. Other times, you better put it away. We need to stay safe here. We need to be more conservative. So I hope that's answering your question, my friend, because it's a very important one, and it's not. I think the way I approach it with inner reconciliation is pretty unique to kind of spell the whole thing out there. But like I said, it's not. It's great that you noticed it. Now, the next step for you is to release any attempt you're making to decide which one's right and which one's wrong. There's no such thing. Nothing's right or wrong until you take a position. If you see that they're just part of the natural functioning of life, you can see that in any given moment, something has to be dominant that responds to that moment. And when you are completely in your equanimity, the right thing responds in just the right amount. And that's how we know the kind of wisdom. And when those people where they just get it right all the time, well, that's why. They're not walking into a situation with an agenda. They're walking in completely and totally as themselves. My phone, let's see how long more it lasts. My phone is that I'm actually using to read the questions, because I can't do both on the iPad, is running low. I may have to plug it in a minute, but we'll worry about that in a second. Namaste from Ava. Hello, Ava. Good to see you. Wonderful that you're here. Ava from Poland. Indus River says namaste. Hello. Daryl Sanders says, but GP, how do we balance accepting what is and challenging things that obviously need to be changed or bettered? It's another great question. I have a very simple criteria when I'm doing that, because I know that I cannot resolve a conflict as long as I'm right and you're wrong, right? That's what our world has come to. It's this, right? And it's just destroying us. It's tearing this country apart. I'm not sure anything's going to survive it. So it can't work. The only thing that can work is a common set of values. And to me, the only measurement, the only thing that justifies a value is love. Simple as that. Love. What's the most loving thing to do? You can see that our modern economic system is based on profit, not love. If it makes money, it's good. If it doesn't make money, it isn't. That's it. There's no love in that at all. Matter of fact, it'll destroy anything in its path to make profit, right? So to me, that is a substandard, subhuman value, the implications of which, the effect of which is obvious, right? Look at the consequences. Christ said, by their fruits you shall know them. And you look at the consequence, well, it doesn't work. It's very practical. My idea about it is very, very practical. And the thing that I've seen that is consistently always ends up with good results is love. Now, sometimes that love has to sacrifice its position in order to maintain the love. Sometimes that love has to be incredibly assertive. Gandhi was a very, very loving human being, right? He harmed nothing. He refused to do harm, right? He refused to resort to violence. But man, was that guy powerful. He made what at that time, we forget that at that time after World War II, the United States had not taken over the role as the dominant empire. The United Kingdom was. The sun didn't set on the British Empire. It was the most powerful force on earth. And this one little guy, using no means of violence, got them to leave under their own power. Now, his values were clear, right? India deserved its freedom, and he's absolutely right. And they did. We all do, right? And we have all sorts of different kinds of despots. The empires aren't the same as they used to be, but they're still empires, right? And he chose nonviolence as his means. Incredibly loving and incredibly powerful. So yes, we have to make important decisions as to what is the most right thing to do. But it has to come from this place of recognition that you can't doggedly hold on to a position, because if you do, you will create a conflict. Sometimes the conflict is forced on you. I mean, we're in a conflict right now. The world is not being run by love, it is being run by greed, right? And that greed is self-destructive. That's why it's one of the 7 deadly sins. It's one of the 3 poisons in Buddhism. It kills itself. It's a cancerous parasite, right, that will in fact destroy everything for its own interest, because it's just blind as a bat, right? So we have to speak out against greed wherever we see it. We have to eliminate it from ourselves. And greed in Buddhism is beautiful, because it isn't just the extreme avarice that we see in corporations and the billionaire class and all of that. It is the discontent that seeks to fulfill itself from the outside. When Buddha used the word greed, any attempt to fill up a hole in here with something external was greed. It was not the extreme. Just like suffering to Buddha was not the extreme misery and grief that we see. It was discontent. And that discontent, wanting to fill itself, reaches for things in the outside world. That's greed. So the position I take is not one that's just a milquetoast. It's not a doormat. You're just not laying down for it. It's just wise. You have to be wise. When Christ was confronted by the Jewish leaders of his day, because the Jewish law had specified that a woman committing adultery should be stoned to death. Not the men. Weird, right? Because it kind of takes two, right? But the woman would be stoned. I don't know what happened to me. There's no mention of it. So anyway, they bring this woman caught in the very act, throw her in front of her, say she's supposed to be stoned. They're all ready to stone. Now he could have given a big speech about how you should be loving, and so what? It wouldn't have done anything. It would have had no effect because they were right under their law. The approach he took was incredibly wise and brilliant and worked. And that which says, okay, you're right, she should be stoned. The one among you who is without sin, you cast the first stone. Bam! No self-respecting Jewish person could say, I'm without sin. He kind of put it right back on top of him. That's the kind of wisdom that we need today. He didn't try to deny the law because it's part of what has to happen. He didn't say, don't pay your tax. He said, unto Caesar's that which is Caesar's, and unto God that which is God's. And so that's the kind of adept, masterful wisdom that we are seeking to cultivate. And I hope you're all attempting to do just that, because this is what our world needs more than anything else. I'm going to dim the screen a little bit, see if I can make my phone last a bit longer, so I won't have to change have to plug it in quite yet. Is that answered for you, Daryl? A little long-winded. But obviously, if you see something that needs change to the better, change it. But don't be attached to the result. That's key. Do everything you can to make it better. But allow for the possibility that you may not know what better is. You could be wrong. You also allow for the possibility that something else could come up that would be even better. Allow for the possibility that somebody else may have a better idea. So let go of, that impulse to make things better is real. It needs to be loved and cherished. Let go of your attachment to the way it's supposed to happen. That's what's key. If you have an attachment to the way it's supposed to work out, that's where the suffering is. But there's no suffering in the natural desire to grow and improve and all of that. Just don't take that on as a way of life. I've got to always grow. I've got to always improve. No. When you recognize that you are already complete, you are already whole, you can begin to trust the vision that unfolds. It says, this can be better. This can be better. This could be better. I can learn this. I can learn this. There's nothing stopping growth from happening. Matter of fact, it happens more naturally and more fully when you realize that you don't need to grow. Your experience is growing all the time, but the consciousness, which is aware even of the growth, is in fact changeless. The realization of that changelessness actually precipitates smoother and greater growth in experience. It actually harmonizes experience. It seems like a paradox, and it is. But the more you realize you are changeless, the more easy change comes, because life is a flow. But the flow is always on the other side of the lens. You're on this side of the lens. The more you know who you are, the more what's on this side of the lens harmonizes, because the lens becomes clearer. The more you realize who you are, the more of you is behind the lens, which means that all of the elements that were creating the conflict out here are dissolving. And what's left? Benevolent, harmonious life, which is the real nature of things. So, wow. Again, please like and share. This really helps me. Let's see. Mitch says it's 7:36 in the morning on Monday. Whoa! Because it's wow. So that means it starts at like 7 in the morning there, whereas here it start. Oh, you guys are a half hour, right? I get the whole time thing. I think we should stop. Okay. Um, Anyway, wow, it's Monday morning, so you're listening to this before watching this on your way to work or before you go to work. Man, amazing. Let's see. Sebastian says, "Hi GP, what is the best way for you to integrate the body with this understanding?" Ah, well, it's to understand what the body really is, right? Now, I don't ever tell anybody to ignore their body. I exercise, I eat well. I mean, I'm taking care of this body. I want it to last as long as it possibly can, and as long as it lasts, I want it to be as functional as it possibly can, so I can keep doing this, right? Right? But we truly need to understand the nature of all things, and the body is not what we think it is. If you really dive deeply into the actual experience of your body, and this is where much of the Buddha's teaching is very helpful because he really covers all of this, that what we experience is sensation, what we call sensations. I mean, if you just close your eyes and feel your body, you'll notice that without sight and without putting the image of a form to whatever you're feeling, that the whole world of sensations becomes different. It becomes a whole different way of perceiving things, perceiving it through sense. Now, if you just do that and just focus on the sensations, you will begin to realize that there's no way to tell from the sensations whether there's a physical body or not, whether it even exists. And in fact, if you look further enough, you find it doesn't. There is no material world out there. There is only the experience of what we call sensation in consciousness. In other words, consciousness itself modulates. It's like consciousness vibrates. It's hard for us to imagine because consciousness is not a thing. It's not a form. It's not an entity. It's not made up of particles. It is, the best way to describe it is kind of like an infinite, immovable field that fills all space, but actually is beyond space. It actually gives rise to space. It's prior to space, so it's spaceless and it's timeless. But it isn't, but it's not nothing. Right? And so it vibrates. And the vibrations have different frequencies. Just like, a slower vibrating light is red, a faster vibrating light is violet. And that's the range we can see. There's even more ranges it vibrates that we can't see, that the eye cannot pick up. And I guess my understanding is the eye has only been able to see blue for the last 1,000 or 2,000 years. That it's a relatively recent thing that the eye has evolved that we can actually see that blue frequencies. So at any rate, so what we're experiencing are different frequencies of vibration. One frequency is what we call the body, sensation. Another is emotion. Another is thought. And within that sensation, there's all sorts of different kinds of modulations of it, right? None of that is actually being produced by a body. And that's a big, bold statement that I'm making. And there you go. This is Satsang. I'm not teaching class of manifestation. This is Satsang. So we're going right to the root of it. And you can just verify it for yourself. Sit in meditation on the sensations and see if there's any information in the sensation itself that tells you that the origin of that sensation is coming from outside of you. You won't be able to find it. So the existence of a physical body that is producing sensations is a concept, an unverifiable, unprovable concept. And in fact, What's actually being experienced is consciousness aware of itself. Understanding that about the body, you realize that the body, like the mind, is simply a word we invented to summarize a certain kind of experience, completely contained within consciousness. The same is true for emotion. It's a different kind of vibratory experience. The same thing for thought. It's a different kind of vibratory. Those are all words that we use, that we created to describe three very primary modes of experience, quality of experience. And you notice there's a continuum between them. They're very, very closely related. With the creation of those abstractions, we began, well, where is it? Well, the thought is in the brain, and the feelings are in the heart, and coming from the inside, and sensations are coming from the outside. As you break it down, you find that the body disappears into just sensation, but the sensation, not having an origin in the body, disappears simply into vibration. And that disappears simply into an experience within consciousness. And so nothing becomes external until finally the whole thing falls back into just pure awareness, aware of itself. That's about... Did I go too far with that? I mean, it is... For somebody to tell you, no, you don't actually have a body, is pretty radical. So I hope I didn't lose you all here, and I'm happy to entertain questions about it. But I do invite you to truly explore the nature of your own experience. This is not a theory that I picked up. Right? This is what I saw directly from my own inquiry into it. And I found that Buddha confirmed it, and Nisargadatta confirmed it, and Ramana confirmed it. All of the major sages all confirmed it. And I say, whoa, okay, well, that gives it some credibility. It's not just my own crazy subjective view of it. I just could not find, and I still can't find, any proof that anything exists outside of consciousness. And so I've completely bought 100% the consciousness model of the universe, the consciousness model of existence. And I see that matter is a concept. Dalai Lama said it himself. He said matter is a metaphysical assumption, not a scientific truth. And it is. It is an assumption. It's a deeply held assumption, but it is an assumption nonetheless. So that's a very long-winded and probably a way deeper. I think you were just thinking, hey, should we eat good food? The answer is yes. Stay away from processed food. Stay away from the nonsense. Stay away from all the stuff you don't need. Right? Do things in moderation. Take care of yourself. Exercise, and it'll take care of itself. That's the practical side of it. So I hope that helps. Let's see. Sun Apollo. Hey, from London, GP. Could you go into social anxiety? I feel... Did she continue it somewhere? Oh, yeah, there it is. I feel my limiting belief is that I feel like I'm missing something that others have. Ooh, that's a common one. I feel weird and different in social situations, and I don't know how to break free. Boy, I have many different methods for addressing this. So let me address it on, inner reconciliation, of course, being it. You hear me talk about it all the time. It's because it's the system I created to help people both overcome their conditioning and trauma and all of that, and simultaneously open yourself up for the deeper kind of spiritual inquiry into who you actually are. When you're talking about social anxiety, when you say, I feel the social anxiety, I want to withdraw, I feel that others have, okay, just stop for a second, and you can even do it right now, and bring those situations to mind, and you'll notice that what happens is there's a feeling, an emotion, a sensation. And emotions and sensations are very closely related. I mean, the emotions are a physical sensation that has been generated from the inside, whereas the sensation is one that's come from the outside. I know, they're imaginary. I'm speaking in relative terms now. Because there is no inside and outside if there's no body. There's only the conscious awareness. Now, If you just go to that feeling, right, and take off all the labels, all the ideas, and especially the I part of it, there's just a feeling. That's all it is. Now that feeling arises, and there's a story that goes along with it. I have social anxiety. Okay. Put that word out of your mind, that phrase. Right? Imagine you never ever heard that phrase, and you've got just this feeling now. Now, feelings are simply a conditioned response, right? There's something happened in your past that triggered a sense that in certain circumstances I'm going to feel withdrawn, and it's a feeling. And over time, we've created levels of abstraction, stories and thoughts and feelings, all sorts of things on top of it. And remember, the more abstract you get, the further away you get from the actual truth, right? So we're going to turn around and work our way back. And where's the essence of it? Just the feeling. Now, notice when that feeling comes up, you've got a whole storyline about it, right? And you've got an aversion to it. I don't want to feel that. And simultaneously, you've got an attachment to, I want to feel, confident and, open and, at ease and all that sort of. I don't want to feel this. So we're dropping social anxiety. We're dropping all the words. We're even dropping the idea of where it came from. Because in fact, in essence, it's not even that important, right? Sometimes you have to dig in, but let's just go right for the jugular, right? And that's a feeling. Now, feelings are there all the time, right? The nervous system is nothing but a system that reacts to the environment, and it reacts to the environment in predefined ways, based on experience and history and upbringing, all of that kind of stuff, right? Don't need to get into detail with it. Go to the feeling, right? Go to the feeling and notice how you have an aversion to it, you want it to go away, and you want a different one, right? Now, what did I say right at the beginning? What's the cause of suffering, right? The conflict between what's here, right, and what I want to be here, right? Aversion and attachment. Oops, some more paint. I'm helping my son paint the house. So what I'm going to invite you to do is go directly to the feeling, be with the feeling, drop the aversion, drop the attachment, and just be totally okay with what's here now. Don't label it. Don't make up a story about it. Don't try to anticipate where it came from, what my childhood experience was. None of that, right? The simplest approach there is, pure presence. And just say, it's okay for you to be here. And notice that it's just a sensation running through the body. Now, what happens if a reaction, something happens in the environment, and the pre-programmed response in your nervous system reacts, right? What happens if that reaction stops, right? There's a feeling, but that feeling doesn't cascade into a story, into thoughts, into other feelings, into ideas of trauma. What happens if the reaction simply stops right there? There's a feeling in my system. In that moment, you are in a state of pure equanimity. You're not suppressing that feeling. You're not trying to get rid of it. You're not attaching to something else. You are 100% present with it. But while it's not being suppressed, it's also not cascading forward. You have cut it off. You've cut off the energy that perpetuates it. Yes, it is uncomfortable. That's why you want it to go away. I'm inviting you to stay totally with the discomfort. And what you'll find is something really amazing. You'll find it's going to just go away. You won't have to do anything. Because the nature of all things is that they come and go, right? Talked about that earlier too. Everything comes and goes except you. So if you just stay as you really are, not coming and going, and being 100% with what does come and go, with no idea that it should be anything other than what it is, right? And of course, it can't be anything other than what it is. Then you are simply being that perfect presence. You are being in perfect equanimity, and it will go away. It will just dissolve. No fresh energy to perpetuate it, and its nature is it's not self-sustaining. So it will simply dissolve. You could try this on things as simple as an itch. If you're, meditating, right, and you get an itch, don't scratch it. Watch it. Notice how you want to get rid of it. Notice how you want to move away from it. You can experience and see the entire functioning of your energy system. And you see at the subtle level how it actually is working. But seeing it at that subtle level with the deep knowledge that you are not that. You're watching it. You are the one seeing it. Then you can sit there through all the discomfort, and that itch will go away. I guarantee it. It'll get stronger at first, right? Our habit is just scratch. But you are basically stopping the reactions. And in stopping the reactions and remaining present, you're going, well, what's actually happening here? And the end result is that your inner sight, your inner vision becomes more and more refined, sharper. You become more powerful, more courageous, more what's the word? More resilient, more unmovable, more powerful, to the point where nothing will move you, because you know everything that happens in your life, everything is going to come and go. And the secret to perpetual happiness is the end of reactivity, when there's no more disagreement with what is. Something comes, it's okay that it comes. Something goes, it's okay that it goes. And from that space opens up the wisdom that can be very, very powerful, like a Gandhi that says, this is going to change. If you have the faith, say unto that mountain, be removed and cast into the sea, and it will be so. Nothing will be impossible for you, because you are no longer... Your life is no longer a series of reactions. Your life is the powerful, unmovable presence. Does that make sense to you, my friend? Does it make sense to anybody? How am I doing on... since I dimmed the screen, I definitely have less... the power's not going away so quickly, so maybe I won't have to plug it in by the time we're done. In about, 48 minutes, 45 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, there's a million questions here. Let's see. Forgive me if I end up accidentally skipping over some. That does happen. I'm trying to keep track of all of the questions as they come, but as you can imagine, I get a bunch of them. So let's see. I am the missing. Is it, for instance, I'm 100 pounds overweight. Do I just accept that as what is, or try to change it? No, you don't have to accept that as it is. Of course, we want to look our best, and of course, being 100 pounds overweight isn't healthy, right? So, but we can't beat ourselves up about it too. And we can't, if you... We have to see it, though, all of the things that we want to improve in our lives, if we see them from a point of view of spirituality, if we look at them from the point of view that there's a deep meaning here, there's a deep message, it won't be just trying to fix yourself. It'll be trying to discover yourself. It'll be trying to be who you actually are. There's a reason why we put on too much weight, right? There's an emotional imbalance. Something inside of us is not satisfied. And so to make up for that dissatisfaction, it resorts to things that it can get a momentary sense of satisfaction from. It can be eating, it can be shopping, it can be entertainment, it can be surfing the net, which makes the body less active. It can also be, and you acquire an appetite for foods that are really quickly gratifying, things that are loaded with sugar, processed stuff that's really unhealthy. What you can do is you can approach it in a couple of different ways. And the way I like to approach it is I like to be both proactive and I'd say, okay, I'm going to change my diet, but I try to do it not extreme. I go, okay, what can I substitute that I'm eating that's unhealthy with something that is healthy? How can I increase the basic nutrition going into my body? Because the problem with our processed food, and the reason why the United States in particular is extremely overweight, obese, the general population actually obese, they've actually had to change the scales because we got so heavy, is because we eat crap. The food is badly produced. We've depleted the soil. It's loaded with all sorts of chemicals and stuff, and then it's processed so badly that there's no nutrition left in it. And they put in sugar to give us the illusion that we're actually getting some nourishment. We are completely overfed and undernourished. So we have to start shopping organic. You have to start thinking for yourself. Right? Now, just doing that isn't going to get to the root of the problem. But you will find that every time you try to make a change like that, you're going to run into inner resistance. All right, so now if you can do exactly what I did with, I think it was Son Apollo before, is to just sit with that resistance, right? But with the full intention that I'm not going back to the way it was, right? You're not going to talk me out of making what is obviously a positive change in my life. But at the same time, I'm using this as an opportunity to become internally liberated. And what does it mean by liberated? It means that I am in the position of non-reaction even when attachment, which wants me to grab onto the quick fix, and aversion to changing any habit, let alone a habit that is going to affect something like that, being with that, seeing that, and not budging, not making concession, not making a compromise, right? But completely removing all the story from it. And what'll happen is the real emotional pain, the real emotional issue that this was simply trying to mask will begin to come to the surface. And it may not be pleasant when it does. Another one of the reasons I created Inner Reconciliation is it creates an environment where these things can come up and they don't devastate you. They actually become very easy, very, very smooth the way they work through the system. It's the most gentle way I've found to be able to allow for the kind of deep wounds that are creating these behaviors to arise. But it's effective when you let yourself be in that place of pure presence, pure self-acceptance. So self-acceptance doesn't mean I don't want to change things. It means you're accepting the fact that impulse to do self-destructive behavior, right, has at its root a cause. And the acceptance of yourself is being loving enough to let that cause come to the surface and be healed. At which point, this impulse to grab won't be there anymore. But the only way that can happen is you've put yourself into the creative tension of not yielding the position, but also but also being willing to be present with what is here. Because the reaching for something, a quick gratification, is an avoidance of what's here, right? So if you take that out of the picture and don't avoid it anymore, you're going to feel the full brunt of it. But if you realize that everything, every feeling is being witnessed by the perfect whole consciousness, and that every feeling, if it is not indulged or believed or identified with, will eventually dissolve. It has to. It's nature. It is not self-sustaining. It is only sustained by your attention to it, your belief in it, and your identification with it. Is that clear, my friend? Does that help you? Thank you, Daryl. Beautiful, touching question. Dux. Hello, Dux. Spelled D-U-X, by the way. When I reach a state when my thoughts recede considerably, I notice different qualities in the nature of consciousness. Is your non-dual state uniform, or has layers that intensity, okay. Or has layers that differ in intensity. What'll happen is, as the thoughts recede, you become increasingly sensitive to subtle energies. That's really what it is. The what we call the physical are just the grossest of the energies. Thoughts are much more subtle, aren't they? And much more fleeting. But there's a whole world beyond that. There's a whole world. There are sensations and feelings so subtle that we don't have names for them. Thought can't deal with them because we can't name it. They're just too subtle. That's the world that begins to open up. Consciousness has infinite variety in the way that it manifests itself. But the essence of it, the non-dual truth, the reality of it is unmoving. It does not... The modulations that are manifestation are a manifestation of that which is completely empty. So it's not consciousness has different intensities. This is a tough one for people to grasp, because it seems like, oh, non-duality, duality, non-duality. They're not two. That's the whole point of non-duality or Advaita. They are not two. They are two aspects of the same transcendent thing. The transcendent essence of it is simply the I. It's what I am. It is so transcendent, it is beyond anything anybody can possibly grasp. The only way you know it is because you are it. That's the only way it can be known. It cannot be sensed. It has no qualities that define it. Every quality that defines anything makes an object that is perceivable. And yet all of those qualities, however gross or however subtle, all emanate from this same qualityless being. It's the best way I can describe it, at least right this second, because the mind cannot, I can only point, right? The mind cannot grasp the true non-duality. Can't do it. Because the mind is always compare and contrast. It has to have two things. So the one thing is completely outside of what can be spoken of. So it says right in the beginning of the Tao that can be spoken is not the true Tao. The Tao that can be named is not the true Tao. That is you. That which is perceiving my words. Right? I don't want it to make it the Tao, this thing out there, this distant, big, mystical, godlike thing. It's not that. It's what's hearing my words right now. It's that simple. What's hearing my words cannot be defined. Right? Every experience you have can be. Right? But it's all emanating from them. There's not consciousness here in this world out here that's interacting with it. Right? And consciousness is pure and this is corrupt. No, it's all consciousness. But the nature of consciousness is that it manifests itself. It's two aspects, the changeless and the changing, the empty and the full, and they are one. The actual reality is unknowable. It is transcendent. That's all you can say about it. And this is constantly going on. That's all I can say. And point you. Below thought, where you got, right? And all of a sudden, there's these modulations of energy going on. Great, they're too subtle for thought to even capture. You can't even speak about them. They're too subtle it's just a whole other dimension. And people are sensitive to that, sorry. But then we'll project a world in there, and there's interdimensional beings and like. We don't have to go to there. You can just realize that as you become more refined and you go beyond feeling, thought, and sensation, you find a much bigger universe that is far more interesting and far more subtle than is captured by, to that, thought is gross, just as an object opposed to a thought is grosser than, and I don't mean gross like, yuck, I mean gross as in opposed to subtle. I mean, that's just the opposite of subtle. The thoughts begin to look gross compared to the subtlety of this and the nuance. It goes on and on. There's no limit to it. There's no end to it, because consciousness is infinite in its nature. So the manifestation of consciousness is infinite in its range of expression. So very good. So it's important to understand, though, that it is not, that consciousness is not like a string vibrating. I mean, what we're talking about here is so subtle that all I can do is point you at it, because it can't be named. You can't speak of it, right? All I can say is that which is perceiving is imperceivable, and yet it can perceive universes of such subtlety. But notice, to point it back to you, to the place you really need to be looking, is that notice is consciousness all that subtlety? All of that? Notice. Something noticed that subtlety, didn't it? So that something must be even more subtle. And of course, that something is you, right? You're the one looking at it. Does that help you? Does that do it for you? That was ducks. Does that do it for you, ducks? Good. Hello from Finland. Hello, Tony. I think you may be new, Tony. Tony. Oh, I can't pronounce your names. Sorry, I'll butcher it. Tony, I got it. That's good. Tony with an I. So I think that's a girl. Daryl says hello, Tony. Let's see. Inner Smile. Hi, GP and everyone. Hello, Inner Smile. Glad to have you. A little conversation going between Mike and Daryl. Interesting. Chris says, thanks, GP. That made a lot of sense. I'm aware of all these characters, but I'm not identifying with any of them. I am just aware of them. Perfect. That's it. That's all you have to do. But notice these characters are not a problem. If we identify with one, we make problems. They're the nature of the flow of life, right? And you are deeper than that. You're the one perceiving them. If you harmonize with those, you find your life is harmonious. It's that simple. All of those different aspects are like the instrument that consciousness, is playing. That's what this life is all about. You can think of those as the body, the neck, the keys, the strings, the bridge, the pickup on a guitar. It makes up one unit that is utterly beautiful when it's harmonious, when everything's in tune and the neck is the right shape and there's no hum in the pickup and the bridge is the articulation is in and the keys are strong enough, right? Then the whole thing functions as a whole as this beautiful instrument of expression. But let's say you favor the pickup over everything else. You got a great pickup, right? And everything else, you're in the way. The strings are buzzing. No, it's the pickup. Right? Harmonize it. Everything becomes a harmonization. And I don't mean a balance like this does this. It's a flow. It's a constant flow. We all love a screaming electric guitar. Well, that's distortion. I mean, that's like an overdriven part of the thing. And it's beautiful, right? So in that moment, but you wouldn't want to listen to that all the time. It's the contrast. So other times it's very soft, very gentle, very open. So the whole idea is that when you are in the position of that light at the center, aware of all the different aspects of this instrument, you're the musician now. You get to play. You're the artist. You have your 7 colors that you get to work with that combined have an infinite degree of shading, don't they? Right? All sorts of incredible colors. It's amazing. Go to the paint shop sometime and look at all the new colors that are happening. It's still the same 7 frequencies, right? Just the diversity and the variety of it is infinite in scale. So very fundamental things with an infinite variety in scale that can give you an insight into the ultimate being, which is the one thing that creates an infinite variety of everything. So look at the variety of notes that create every piece of music there is. There's only 12 in the English. There's there's more in the Western scale. There's more in the Indian scale, which has quarter tones. But it's a finite number that create everything. Any given song in any given key has got basically 7 notes with a few extra things thrown in. 7 the 7 colors of the rainbow, the 7 frequencies. And 3 of those are primary, right? So when you look at that, you see very small numbers make for infinite variety. It means the ultimate infinite variety is one, the one that makes everything else. And that's a nice metaphor to help come to understand this whole non-dual thing. Let's see. Mike says, could consciousness as a provisional concept be described as intelligent energy? Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Or a self-aware field. Yeah, you can think of it as energy, because energy is a materialistic concept of consciousness. Everything is energy. Well, it's not, but we think of energy as a material thing, and it's good. It's good to see what we call matter as energy, because energy is really non-physical. It's nobody even knows what it is, but it takes these forms, and we think of it, okay, the energy forms various kinds of things. There's little particles, those make bigger particles, and it doesn't actually work that way. If you see that energy is actually the mind's misconception of consciousness, which is the real substance out of which everything is made, you get closer to the truth. So it is quite legitimate as a metaphor to call it intelligent energy. But be careful, because for most people, energy means something external, physical, right? That which is making up matter. Whereas consciousness is the absolute opposite of that. So you just have to be careful with the words, but as a metaphor, it's beautiful. It's an intelligent field. It's a self-aware energy. It's a self-aware space, even, is a good way of doing it, even though, and then little by little you go, all the words just fall apart. And what is it? Me. It's me. It's God. It's source energy. It's Buddha nature. It's Christ consciousness. It's Krishna consciousness. It's the universe. It's source energy. It's me. It's me. It's what's hearing the words. It's what tastes the food. It's what has a black swan. It's me. When me refers to consciousness and not the body, it's me. 90 minutes. Am I going to make it on my time here? Quick check of that. I think we're going to make it. Great. Fantastic. I think I'm not going to have to plug it in. Whoops. An hour late. Ron. Yeah. My bad, Aaron. So good to... so good to have you here. There's plenty of people who are joining now that didn't realize the United States turned their clocks forward. It was my oversight in not putting into the email. I didn't even think about it, because I didn't know about it till today, and I didn't even think about putting it into the email. Yesterday, somebody mentioned it. Let's see. Makes sense. Let's see. Whoops, an hour late. Inertia, is that the name? I've got my screen really dim so that the battery doesn't run out before the end of Satsang. For some of the things are a little bit harder to see. Oh, Nina. It looks like Nina Hatos. Hi, GP. Hello, Nina. Tatfu. Yeah, Tatfu Tan. Can you talk about vasanas, our subconscious actions? Beautiful. Vasanas are a Sanskrit word in the Hindu tradition that refers to those tendencies that, our modern word unconscious mind, unconsciousness doesn't capture it, because the unconscious is really just the functioning of the body in this life. There's no such thing. Unconscious mind is an idea we have. What we're really talking about is the automatic patterns of the nervous system, everything reacting to the environment in such a way that they're pre-programmed responses that are not under our conscious control until we realize they're there. And once we realize they're there, there are a way to release them. Vasanas refers to something even deeper. It refers to the deepest seeds. These are the deepest seeds of being that actually produce each lifetime. While the vasanas are present, birth takes place. When the vasanas are gone, no more births take place. In Buddhism, they refer to it as the repository consciousness, or storehouse consciousness. It's where our deepest wounds and samskaras and reactive patterns, I mean, that's really all it is. It is a deeply in-ground reactive pattern that doesn't get questioned and doesn't get released and is basically stuck in the storehouse consciousness. The storehouse consciousness is what gets liberated. It gets transformed into the manifestation of pure awareness. Because who you are is actually deeper than that. And the storehouse consciousness is kind of the first level of identification. It is the desire to be somebody. It is a desire to take form. And those desires, they create all sorts of reactions. So when I do those exercises where I bring you to the feeling, where you don't suppress the feeling, but you don't react to it, right? You curtail the reaction that you're feeling. What you are doing is you are cutting off the samskaras. You are cutting off the vasana. Because if the reaction doesn't take place, the energy has to dissolve. If it dissolves, the wound is healed. The trauma is gone. And that particular element has been cleared from the storehouse consciousness. I think the idea of the Akashic records is actually kind of a dilution of this, of the vasanas, of the storehouse consciousness, because it's presented in such a way that people want to read their history and who am I going to become, and all of that. It just doesn't go far enough to realize that those are patterns that have been put into place, and they're not who you actually are. And so it's not that much of a help to know, well, to know that this happened in this life and this happened in this lifetime and the next lifetime I'm going to do this, because we want to eradicate all of that. We want to go right to the root. We want to go right for the jugular, right? Right down to the bottom of it. And so we find that there are tendencies within us that continue to arise. The only way to get through them is to remove your belief in them, your focus of attention on them, and your identification with them. Right? And what that means is a willingness to be with the feeling, whatever it is, the reaction, the compulsion to react that comes as the automatic response to the environment, with consciousness, so that it just doesn't react and continue, right? The energy continues. But instead, you stand in this other place that sees how the reaction takes place, which is always an aversion or an attachment, right? And you neither... Oh, did I just freeze? Can anybody hear me? Please type in the chat if I have frozen, if you can hear me. Let me see if I can get it to go again.